In this case study, I will be talking about the results of the most impactful and powerful business and wealth talisman I've ever made, which is a Mercury in Virgo talisman. And so I rightfully called this the ever-flowing coin purse. For someone who fully watches this and takes note of everything I say, looks at the election, the materials, understands the philosophy behind how and why it was created the way it was, you have 100%, billion%, all the tools to recreate something like this for yourself. Literally no stone is being left unturned in this video, and giving away all of this for free. Not only that, but I'm also going to be talking about several other secrets about this election and this particular talisman that very few people even know exist inside of the election, and only comes from the various other traditions that I've started: Tibetan astrology, Vedic astrology, Chinese astrology, these things that also, thankfully, by the grace of the guru, by the grace of my teachers, we have the ability to see deeper into this election and into what's going on. I could probably teach for days on this talisman, on this election, on all of the physical things that I had to do in order to help really squeeze out the results of the talisman. But as you'll hear in a bit, I didn't have to do too much in between the initial sign. I already had a situation in my life to where this was ready to, it was primed for the result. And we'll discuss that as well. So throughout the video, I'm going to be highlighting several secrets throughout the video. So be sure to watch so you can learn all of them, so you too can create something like this. So here we have the image. These are the exact talismans that I created for Mercury and Virgo. And secret number one, for the most studious, you can see and understand that the image that was used is the Planetary Intelligence Sigil of Mercury. And so the only image that was on the talisman that gave the result that I'm going to be discussed is this Planetary Intelligence Sigil, which we can find in Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy. So which materials did I use? I chose to use marcasite, which is pyrite or fool's gold. And from our classical source of On Minerals by Albertus Magnus, we say that marcasite is a stony substance, and there are many kinds of it, for it takes the color of any metal, whatever, and it is so-called silver or golden, and so on for the other metals. But the metal that colors it cannot be smelted from it, but evaporates in the fire, leaving only useless ash. The stone is well known among alchemists and is found in many places. So very much, it has these mercurial qualities, which are espoused in its unique behaviors when heated or when treated with the principles of alchemy. So it behaves like a mercurial stone. It's also mercurial in the way that it is believed to be gold. It's the fool's gold. It's silver. It's golden. Particularly the kind of marcasite I used was golden marcasite. There is a slight difference, a slight different coloration. So I hunted for a very, very long time to find gold marcasite. And that I was able to find gold marcasite cabochons, pyrite, and assorted normal pyrite, cabochons, silver, pyrite, cabochons. And those are the materials I used for the body of the talisman. And then this was set in a sterling silver gold ring for myself. Now, what kind of incense did I use? I used frankincense, cloves, and cinnamon. And in Agrippa, we have multiple recipes for mercurial incenses and references to this. For Mercury, take mastic, frankincense, cloves, and cinquefoil, and the stone acates, and incorporate them all with the brain of a fox or a weasel and the blood of a pie. To Mercury, all the peels of wood and fruit, as cinnamon, lingam, cassia, mace, citron peel, and bayberries, and whatever seeds are odoriferous. And so I did a select number of these listed incenses to try them out and see how they were going to work. In this age of talisman making, I really didn't actually know what was going to happen or what the result was going to be. And so part of it was wanting to experiment a little bit with what I had on hand and what was easy to find, and drawing from other experience. So I enjoyed the fact that with cinnamon and with frankincense, there is like this dual rulership to the sun. This is, as we'll get into, this was something, how was I expecting to make money from this talisman? Through my business, through my professional work. And so the sun shines. The sun is this natural significator of those who are in charge and of leadership. So I think it made sense to be able to find and to use a piece of mercurial incense that also leans into this. And cloves, especially in cloves, I don't know how much experience everyone has cloves, but certainly if you bite directly into a clove, or if you're using it as a seasoning, it has this sharpness. It has like this very splitting flavor. And so this is something, growing up with my grandmother making Italian pasta, I very much know the feeling of accidentally biting into a clove and being fully overwhelmed with the taste and the experience of the clove. So that was certainly the feeling I was wanting this talisman to create, an immediate bursting forth of flavor, of its essence, of its power in my life. And here is a nice particular image that you can find in Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy of the planetary intelligence seal of Mercury. And then the request to the spirit I had when fumigating the talisman was particularly success in negotiation, buying and selling, and business ventures. If you look in the various ways in which one gets wealth from talismans, or if you get wealth from the planets, Mercury is the planet one goes to if you are looking for wealth from business. You can get wealth from the sun, you can get wealth from Jupiter, you can get wealth from Mercury, you can get wealth from Mars. I need to find it. Consider this point secret number 2. That is, there is a great traditional Vedic astrology text, and it talks about like the 6 or the 12 different ways in which we become wealthy, in which we acquire our fortunes in life. And, we can get it through our own work, from our own labor. We can get it through inheritance. We can get it from luck. We can get it from gifts from God. We can get it from destroying our enemies and taking their wealth. We can get it through legal acquisition. There are many, many different ways in which we can get our wealth. And we should be thinking about the profession that we have, the world that we operate in, and be making talismans and be aligning our magic with the most optimal form of wealth. We can either decide to go upstream or downstream. We can either fight the current or not in terms of how we want our magic to be working in our lives. And I think it's worth at least trying to go with the stream, with the most likely form of how we should be getting wealth and increasing our livelihood with what we're already doing. And the invocation I used was the basic Orphic hymn to Mercury. The subject, it is me. I think secret number 3 is that the job that I got, or the opportunity for me to get this job arose after I had done a Mercury petition from the Bigotrix, and that I had done with a earlier series of Mercury Talismans during a Mercury election that really did not turn out that well. I was very, very disappointed in their results and the work, or at least when one compares about the degree of result from getting a job to what ended up happening here. Very different. If we were to look into my chart and see how, and evaluate the houses that it rules, is that Mercury rules an income house in my sidereal chart, and Mercury rules a wealth house in my tropical chart. And natally, I have peregrine dignity, so this is considered safe by most astrologers rules. The next secret number 4, is that if you become a student of Vedic astrology, you'll understand that the income house that Mercury rules is actually a malefic house. It's not considered a good house. It's considered planets that end up ruling this house are misfortunate because they create the karmas that force us to suffer and take rebirth into the next life. So this is also something to remember. And I think at the end of the day, I can certainly attest to this. Life hacks as well. I think with most of these, I've very much been entered into the state of Vajrayana Buddhism and am just cooked with other kinds of magic going on. Secret 5 is around this time. I had also been doing a number of planetary pujas or rituals with the aim of eliminating the suffering and increasing the capacity of the 9 planets, Mercury being included, as well as the co-significator of this election, one could argue, which I will talk about next slide. So this is also something to consider. And I will go ahead and reinforce. In my life for this talisman, my life was fully set up for the effects to arise. All we needed, because I already had a fully operating business with a business partner and several other people, thankfully holding on to their hats, working in the midst of the pandemic. We weren't really out of the woods yet. Things were stressful and very undefined, But literally all we needed to happen in order to get a reasonable amount of success was for someone just to show up and be like, hey, we'd like to work with you, which isn't necessarily the case. If you literally have no job and and if you aren't in a network of people who have the ability or capacity to pay you, then it's going to be much harder for you to receive income. Plus, the industry that I was working in at the time, which is cloud computing, global cloud infrastructure, I think at the time, about 31% of all enterprise companies globally were spending at least $12 million a year on cloud spend. So even a very small fractional percentage of that total amount of money going around is quite a lot. So there is also an intelligence factor of situating myself into a spot to where there is a large amount of expected money changing hands. And Mercury loves this. Mercury is the businessman, is the trader and buyer and seller, the merchant or merchant class individual. Now let's look at the election and see if we can figure out what happens. Now we have two secrets on this slide. I wonder if I should share them first. Let's wait and review the election. So pro is Mercury is very dignified at Virgo, ruling both the ascendant and the midheaven. Mercury is also applying to Jupiter, which by medieval sets of rules, just the fact that Jupiter is a benefic planet overall, it will be trying to aid. It will be trying to produce benefic results, despite it being severely afflicted, both in Capricorn and with Saturn, which really isn't good for Jupiter, but it will try to squeak out some level of beneficence for Mercury. And then, at the time, this is also something I think we were all trying to figure out. I don't know if there's any really good consensus on this, though maybe this talisman makes quite a good case for this, is that Mercury is in chariot with the sun. So it's avoiding combustion because it is in its own sign. Mercury exalts and is an own sign in both of its signs of Mercury, of Virgo and Gemini. But it's in chariot by the sun. So a lot of people will talk about Mercury receiving extra protection because it's in chariot. Now we always have to look at the cons. Now, if we look to the moon and we look at the Lord of the Moon, Lord of the Moon is afflicted. Jupiter is in exile. It's retrograde, and it's with a retrograde Saturn. So the Lord of the Moon is severely crippled, and Moon is separating from Mercury. So texts are very clear in this way to where the result is that we begin with good results, but they won't last. Something will happen, and they will want to change it. Effects start strong and then they disappear. All right, and this is one of the secrets that I talk about here. The nodes are exalted, which is quite curious. Quite curious. What do everyone watching know about the nodes? And this is something I should have known even when I made this talisman in 2020, because one of my teachers, Chris Warnock, in his Essential Dignity Table of the Planets that I have looked at so much in my life, he even lists that Gemini is exaltation for the North Node, or Rahu, and Sagittarius as the exaltation point of the South Node, or Ketu. Now, to the way that I could talk or teach a class for days about this election and this magic and the magic of Mercury, I could talk for days about the magic and the situations, the magic and the elections and nature of Rahu and Ketu. But one of the things that's pertinent for this election is that the North Node, and this I knew when I was making the election, in these more quote-unquote Western texts of astrological magic that mention the behavior of the nodes, the North Node, or the head of the dragon, is seen to increase the natural quality of whatever it is conjoining. So if it's a benefic, it makes it more benefic. If it's a malefic, it makes it more malefic. And so it being in the midheaven sign, being in Gemini, should increase those qualities. So I was thinking, what the heck? This sounds quite excellent. Let us see what happens. Some people are very cautious of the nodes, however, dislike them at all costs because they're so mysterious, they're so shadowy, that even astrologers don't want to dive deep into the nature of the nodes. But any other points we can have about the election? Any other thoughts? I think the best other thought I had from somebody who I'd sat down to review this election with is just particularly asking the question, who or what is this sun in the 12th house? How does that play out over time? And that was quite interesting. And within that state, I think we could say maybe something did play out, but that's for another story time. Now what ended up happening? And thankfully, I didn't bury the lead. This is one of the most successful business talismans and financial talismans, wealth generation talismans I've ever made in my entire life. And I think maybe, what is it? We're on secret number 6 right now. This is like another point. This is like very, very important because I know how the story ends. And one thing I see all the time is that, there's no such thing as a perfect election. Even myself, in looking at this criteria for my own checklist that I follow, maybe this is only +4, or maybe depending on the nature and the quality of the nodes, this is like a minus election. We should pass on this. We could create some criteria that would say, oh no, this is really bad. If we really believe that this application to Jupiter and this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, absolutely terrible, and what happened in the world, in lived experience, was terrible. COVID-19 pandemic, ripping through the world. Clearly it's not good. Doesn't take an astrologer to tell you that. Doesn't take a rocket scientist of interpretation to tell you that. Mercury separating from the moon, not good. Not good one bit. Whatever events start, they will end. They will not be long-lasting. So, we're going to get a lot of good results, but gosh, you're not going to be here forever, so why even bother putting all this time and effort into something that won't last? An additional note about the north node of Rahu. Any sort of gains, they say, Rahu gives are also short-last because he has no stomach. He has a shadow planet. So nothing that he creates will last or will stay. All these ephemeral qualities, why would we ever continue? It's really easy on this side of the magic and this side of the election to disregard it. But I can say that so much of the success and joy and other results of my life have really come from making the talisman of this election. Has it all been good? No. But I think it's supremely naive to think that we're going to make it out of this life alive, number one, or to make it out of life without suffering. And so we can either choose to have more access to resources and ability to let our actions carry weight in our life or not. And I'm not afraid of the results of my action. And at this point in my life, in my role of steering the company, needing to be in charge of creating sustenance for everyone that was working with us, I needed to not be afraid, needed to have courage and not being afraid of what was going to happen. And have trust and faith in my other skills, my mundane skills, my other magical skills, to be able to fix whatever is going on. Because we can see the problems in the chart. To the degree that we can see the future, we can actually plan for it. This is the last point of the secret I'll say. A lot of people who are just astrologers, but not astrological magicians, don't understand the fact that you can see the issue in the future is tremendously valuable intelligence because it allows you to plan for what's going to happen. Before studying astrology, I practiced and studied traditional martial arts and pored over many, many texts of classical military strategy from China and Japan, and some from India, and of course Greece and Rome. The amount of leverage you can create in actually knowing the position of your opposing force, of your enemies, is more than enough to turn the tides of battle, so to speak. All right, here we are. This is another view. We can see here that we have both day and hour of Mercury too. So very, very powerful. And to the degree that the moon is separating, moon is fast at above 13.5 degrees a minute. Very lucky. Yes. So 3 days after making this talisman, this is Mercury Day. Wednesday. No, it was on Friday. So we're closing out the week. So 2 days later, I get a call from my business partner. And I will forever remember this day. I just finished my meditation and, getting ready to get into the weekend. And he says, Josh, make sure you're sitting down. There's talk about going direct with Hyatt Hotels, which was, an absolute shock. So this is the opening preamble of our business agreement with Hyatt Hotels, which I ended up having to negotiate with their legal team and redlining the contract and ensuring that we had, a great stable agreement. But what ended up happening is that the business grew 110% overnight. Knowing that we had these provisions inside the contract, and knowing that the election had these deficiencies that really point to this idea of things starting off very strong, but then tapering off near the end, I just fixed that with a real good individual solution, which is I negotiated for a perpetual duration of the contract. And so it would never end. And it was just a matter of very specific points of the scope of work we would need to negotiate during the future. But there can never be a point where they said that, oh, your main agreement is up. We need to, we're no longer legally capable of working with you. The only thing that could be done is based off of the matter of procurement, of the negotiations at the level of procurement, which are a much easier realm to navigate rather than going through this entire process beforehand. I think the value of this agreement was something about $1.5 million at the time. The following year, they decided to increase resources to about $2.5 million. And then when I had left the company, although the nature of the agreement had changed, and it decreased in value a little bit, but also increased the number of resources, it was at a similar level of $2.5 to $3 million of the value of services for the contract. And then last time I checked, this individual company, they still have this same professional relationship with Hyatt Hotels. And so this, despite it being an election, which showed that results would start off strong and then taper off, really even to the point of breaking and no longer showing results. This agreement has been in effect for 6 years. The company has been making money off of the nature of this agreement for the last 6 years. So you can do the math. On average, over 6 years, with an average contract value of about $2 million, give or take, decreasing amount just through the decreasing price of labor over time, you have about, probably about like an $8 to $10 million set of gross revenue from this talisman, which I consider quite good. Now, did I get that much money? No, I did not. I did get promoted to VP of Operations at the time, and then the year afterwards into Chief Operations Officer. So I did well. Secret number 6, which I've always tried to implement, is when do you grow the company, when you own the business, wasn't able to fully implement that glorious piece of advice in this situation, but was able to negotiate a profit share agreement for my time at the company until it became clear that revenues were going to be stable without me. And then we ended up parting ways. And so no such thing as a perfect election, no such thing as a perfect business negotiation. But this is the nature of Mercury, and definitely the nature of Rahu. You can think you're holding gold in your hands, but it turns out to be pyrite. But even pyrite and gold marcasite, you can sell for quite a good price because it still is very precious and one can do many wonders with it. A major takeaway I hope everyone gets from this is really seeing the level of impact you can create by just doing 2 things. 1, doing a best effort possible you can to follow a set of these electional rules that are talked about in traditional sources, knowing that you're going to have to compromise and not being paralyzed by fear and indecision, and actually attempting to make the talisman, number 1. And number 2, following the ritual rites and procedures that are laid out from the classical texts. If you can just do those 2 things, from what I've seen, it really puts you ahead of the majority of people who are attempting this magic or aspiring to try it. Because number 1, personally, do I think that there's something particularly special about me that allows me to have success in this magic? No, I really don't. If anything, I've had to learn that there is something I think that is special about me. And the special thing about me is that I just listen to people who have been doing this magic before me, 25, 30 years, what they have done, what has worked and what hasn't, and their re-understanding of the rules, actually listening to that, and then using that knowledge, which is really a minimal part, and then applying what's written in the classical texts, and then just looking at what happens. Just those 2 things. Looking what's written down, following them the best I can, and listening to the perspectives of those who've come before. 2 things. And that has allowed me to get every single result from all the talisman case studies that I've been showing. That's what I think. However, fully possible I could be completely wrong. There could be something, maybe there is something in my chart that allows me to get these results that are different, which I think is also fine. And is another reason why I'm sharing this information is so we can know. I don't think there's enough people sharing the results that they've gotten from their talismans, from their magic, applied to their life. And it's my most earnest hope that more people do this. The more data we have, the better we can take action on how to be doing this moving forward. Because one thing is clear, based off of evaluating my own data for the last 9 years, some things have to be off compared to what's being taught, being said, being practiced, and what's written in this very small section of texts we have in translation in this Western canon of astrological magic. Agrippa, Picatrix, Ficino. Certainly not the whole story. I'm going to be sharing the slides of all the case studies together very soon. That should be underneath. If you'd like to learn directly from me, I may be having a version of my mentorship up for enrollment. Please check that out as well. Final secret is literally you can ask me any question, I'll just tell you. So please don't deny yourself the opportunity for knowledge. Talk to you next time.